Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Confessions of a Yarn Addict podcast. My name is Anniken Allis and I'm a Norwegian knitter who lives in Cornwall in the southwest of England. I am really excited because I finally finished this poncho, which I started over a year ago. I'm thinking like March, April last year maybe. I know I put it on hold about a year ago and I'd already been working on it for a while then. Put on hold because I thought it was going to be too small. Then I didn't touch it for a while. Then I changed my mind and decided instead of a poncho I would make a sweater. And then so I ripped out probably like that much. And then I realized that I didn't think I had enough stitches to make a sweater. So then I ripped out a bit more. Then I increased the load and then I didn't work and I wasn't happy with it. So I put it on hold again. That was like beginning of this year. And then finally a few weeks ago I thought, no, I need to get this finished. Don't think I got it on quite straight. I didn't put it on in front of a mirror. I put it on in front of my phone. So I'm going to talk a bit more about this. I'm also going to show you another finish. I cast on something new this week, which I'm already halfway through, and I'm also halfway through another project. I'm actually waiting for some yarn to come for a magazine design, which I need to get on with pretty quickly because the deadline is not that far away. They have extended it, but I still need to, I can't use the full extension period because I'm going on holiday. So I need to have finished by 28th of August. So I'm really hoping the yarn will be here this week. Otherwise it's going to be a real push. So I'm trying to finish what's on my needles before that gets here, because once that gets here, I need to focus on that 100%. So I'm going to talk about what's on my needles, what I finished, a stash acquisition, after a little impromptu trip to Bath this week. So I'll talk about that, or last week rather, so I'll talk about that. And then I'm also going to talk about the environmental impact of yarn. So the thing that prompted this was a Instagram post and blog post by a local yarn shop. So we'll talk about a little bit about that as well. But first, because I want to take this off because it's quite warm today. So first I want to show you this. So you won't get a proper view in front of the camera. I will take some pictures and post those probably at the end. Unless I can manage to insert them here. I'll take some pictures later. But it's a circular yoke, it's knitted from the top down. I may have to do something about the neckline because it's a little bit kind of funny, so I may have to do something about that. If I do something about the neckline, what I'll do is I'll probably undo the garter stitch around the edge, edging, and then do some decreases and then knit it from the, just re-knit the garter stitch, and then I'll adjust the pattern to fit that. But it's got a diamond pattern here using 3 colors, then it's got a bigger pattern here, and then that pattern from the top also goes all the way down. So on me it's about just below my elbows, sort of waist length really. And yeah, I really like it. I'm really happy with it. I was a bit worried at one point that it wasn't going to fit me, but it does, so I'm really pleased with that. So I'll take some photos and post those. Either try and insert them here or insert them at the end. We'll see how we get on with that. So I'm going to take this off because it is fairly warm. I'm always warm in the morning because I work out and then it takes me a while to cool down. So this is what it looks like. It's got garter stitch edging at the bottom. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I knitted it in Lang Merino 200, which I actually sell in my shop. And it's got beads as well. Can you see that? So I like including beads with colourwork knitting. So I'm hoping to have that ready for release kind of in middle of September. I'm hoping we can get most of the tech editing done before I go on holiday at the end of September, and then we can release it when I get back from holiday in time for Yarndale at the end of September, which is my plan. So let's see what else. So I finished something else this week. I finished my socks that have been on the needles for not a long time, but a little bit of time. So these sock blockers are a little bit small, but I put them on the sock blockers so you can see them a bit better. The sock blockers are a weird shape and they're a little bit small. So that's what they look like. So I used my Aventuras sock pattern, which is my new sock pattern, fairly recent, where you can choose from toe up or cuff down. You got a choice of 2 stitch patterns. So this is the alternating rib stitch pattern. You see that? And then you can also choose from a garter rib stitch pattern. And I'm actually going to add a pattern to the online course soon, but more about that later. You can also choose from 2 heels, afterthought heels and toes. So this is the swirly heel and the swirly toe. So that's from my Aventuras sock pattern, which means adventure in Spanish. And yes, I am probably butchering that language. So they're not completely identical, which is strange because if you look, the top blue section starts about the same. So I'm wondering whether I have done a couple of rows but I haven't counted properly. I haven't actually checked it, but I'm wondering whether I miscounted somewhere. I knitted the second one, a lot of that when I was on the go, and some of it last week at this conference we went to, which was quite dark as well, so wasn't that easy to see what I was doing. So, but I'm not bothered about it. I like it. The yarn is from Mud Punch. I don't have the label here, but it is merino, superwash merino nylon, I think. I love Mud Punch. They're also self-striping colorways. I actually have socks in this colorway already, but they're quite old. This yarn has been in my stash for probably about 2.5 or 3.5 years. I know she did a special around Christmas time one year where you could request colorways, so I got a couple of colorways. So this one I really like, and I can't wait to use those. So they might be on my feet tonight. I tend to wear socks in bed every night because my feet get really cold. So talking about socks, so this is Emily requested some socks. So this is the yarn she chose. This is Regia Angora Merino, and it's 65% superwash merino, 25% polyamide, which is nylon, and 10% Angora. When I was knitting with it, I thought it feels incredibly soft. I mean, Regia is soft anyway, but this feels even softer than normal. So I looked at the label and realised it had Angora in it. So it hasn't got the Angora fussiness, but you can feel the softness of Angora. So again, I'm using my Aventuras sock pattern with an afterthought swirly heel, but I did the wedge toe. So the choice in the pattern is a wedge toe and heel or a swirly toe and heel. So I actually mixed them here. So I did the wedge toe and then the swirly heel. Do really like the swirly heel. It fits really nicely. But instead of doing because this is a solid colour, I decided I would add a lace pattern. So instead of doing the stitch patterns that are in the pattern, I actually did a lacy rib stitch pattern. So I do the Aventuras pattern as a separate pattern and also as an online class. And I will add a video on this stitch pattern in the class probably next week. And also how you can change the stitch pattern and incorporate different stitch patterns. I'm not going to add it to the main Aventuras pattern, but I may put up project notes on Ravelry once I've finished this pair of socks. But I cast on for the second. So I finished that on Saturday. Saturday. We were driving back from Cardiff when I finished it, and then I cast on. No, I finished it yesterday, not Saturday. I finished it yesterday. We went to Cardiff for a few days, so I did a lot of knitting in the car and things. So I finished this yesterday after we got back, and then I cast on for the next one, but I haven't done more than a few rows. So I think the second one will take me much longer because I'm not going away for the next 2 weeks, so then I won't get as much knitting done. I am hoping to finish the pair, before we go on holiday at the end of August, so I can take some new socks to knit on holiday. I've been thinking about how many socks to take on holiday. I'm thinking 2. So Emily actually, when I asked her to pick out some yarn for some socks, she picked out 3 balls. So she wants loads of socks before she goes back to uni. So as well as this Regia, she also picked out, this is another Regia, like a rainbow colorway. Sure, I've knitted socks in this before, but I really like a bright, cheerful colorway. And then she also picked out this one, which is West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply. Don't know what colorway that is. Colorway 06. This has got 75% wool, 25% nylon, and 35% of the wool is Blueface Leicester. which is British wool. So love West Yorkshire Spinners. I did some socks with their yarn recently, really like it, and I got quite a bit of their yarn in my stash. So those two are Emily's next 2 pairs of socks. Probably take at least one of these on holiday, maybe both. I haven't decided yet. Simon wants some socks as well. I want some socks as well, so we'll see. And once Vanessa realises that I'm knitting Emily 3 pairs of socks, I'm sure she will request some socks as well. So loads of socks coming up. Right, what's next? So got half a finish. So I'm working on this lace cardigan. So this is knitted sideways. So this is the whole back piece. So it will kind of go, let's see if I can, so it hasn't been blocked yet, but it'll kind of go all the way across my arms, and then there'll be 2 front pieces as well. So I did actually mock block it, so you can kind of see the stitch pattern. So part of it's been mock blocked, part of it hasn't. So I stretched it out on the needles, sprayed it with water and left it to dry overnight, just so I could get a more accurate idea of the measurement, so you can see the stitch pattern a bit better. And this right at the top end is the bit that hasn't been blocked at all. So really like that. Love the colours. I'm on track with my yarn usage so far, which is good. So I finished that last night, and I have not cast on for the front yet. So I'll be doing that later this morning. And I'm going to try and crack on with that till before the yarn for this magazine design arrives. Right, last week we were on holiday. We spent half the week at home, and then we went away for half the week. So we went to Cardiff to visit my oldest daughter Vanessa, who lives there. Emily, my youngest one's moving back there in September to finish university. At the moment Vanessa's there, and she's renting a new flat on her own, and then Emily's moving in with her in September. So we were actually able to stay with Vanessa because she's got 2 bedrooms, which is really, really nice, rather than having to stay in a hotel. On Friday we had planned to go to Friday. We planned to go to Bristol Balloon Festival, which is a hot air balloon festival. Bristol is about an hour's drive from Cardiff, much closer to drive than from where we live. So we decided we'd go. We went about 4 years ago, and it was brilliant. We looked at the weather forecast because the weather forecast was bad over the weekend. It looked like Friday morning was going to be the best, so we thought, right, we'll go Friday morning. We set off quite early. We got up at 5. We left Cardiff about 6:30, I think. We got there, and all the main gates were closed. So there was no signs or anything. We couldn't find an open gate. So we looked on their website, which I'd actually checked before we left Cardiff, and there was no information on their website. So Vanessa went on Twitter, and it said on Twitter that they'd cancelled Friday's events. You think they could put it on their website, because a lot of people wouldn't think to go on Twitter. But so we were kind of stuck in Bristol about 7:30, thinking, what do we do now? So I said, let's go to Bath. And Bath is, I don't know, half an hour away or something like that. It's quite close to Bristol. And we haven't been to Bath for a few years, and I really like Bath. If you're not from the UK or you haven't been to Bath, Bath is a beautiful little city. It's if you like Jane Austen, a lot of her novels mention Bath. One of them, Persuasion, I think it is set, quite a bit of that is set in Bath. Really nice city. Got a beautiful cathedral. It's got the Roman baths, which we didn't go to. I've been before quite a few years ago. It's also got a couple of yarn shops. So there's a shop called Wool, which I've been to before, and then there's a shop called A Yarn Story, which I tried to visit once before in their first location, but we got there an hour before they opened, so we couldn't stay. But since they moved to their city centre location, I haven't actually been to Bath, I don't think, since they moved to their city centre location. So when we got there, because we didn't really have any plans, I thought, right, I want to go to A Yarn Story. So I managed to tear myself away from Simon and Vanessa and go off on my own. It's the shop is located in the Walcott area, Walcott Street, which is sort of like the it's kind of marketed as the independent artisan quarter. It's got some really nice shops there. I didn't have time to pop into very many of them because I didn't have that much time, but I love visiting A Yarn Story. Spoke to one of the members of staff, the lovely Amanda, who I've kind of known a little bit, chatted to a bit online, and she is also a designer, so it's nice to see her and have a chat with her. And of course I bought something. So I bought this project bag, or it's like a mesh bag from Cocoa Knits. So it's got, you can kind of button it together in various ways, but I think this is how it's meant to button together like that. So it's quite small, big enough for a sock project if you're using circular needles, and then you can, you can just pull the yarn through here, so you don't have to like have it open, or you can open it, and I think it would probably sit fairly nicely on the table. So I got that. The only problem with this is because it is mesh, it's got kind of tiny holes, so you've got to be a bit careful that your needles don't poke through the hole. So maybe like stick your needles into the ball of yarn or something. But I thought this would make a quite a nice project bag for sock knitting. So it was a bit of an impulse buy, to be quite honest, but I got that. So that's coconuts. Okay, so I got interrupted. My phone rang. It was my dentist changing my appointment later. So the edit between the two may not be great, but so so at Yarn Store they have a lot of very nice hand-dyed yarn, but it is not cheap, but it is some very, very nice yarn, and I looked around at most of it and there was so much tempting stuff. They had La Bien Amy from France. They had, I think they had Sweet Georgia, which is very nice. Wool Kitchen, I was very tempted by something. But in the end, I decided, because I didn't really have any plans and I'm trying to be a bit more mindful about what I buy, not just buy it because I fancy it. So I got a skein of linen from Midwinter Yarns. So they're a UK company, but they stock a lot of Scandinavian yarn, so I like that. It's a Lithuanian linen, which is not actually Scandinavian, but Lithuanian linen, 100% linen. It's a kind of heavy lace, light fingering weight yarn. It's got 450 meters. It feels very similar to the Vexpo linen, which I got recently. The Vexpo linen has 420 meters per 100 grams, and this has 450 meters. It's a little bit thinner, probably. I am actually thinking, so I was planning to do a project with these two on holiday, and I was actually wondering whether to add in that. So I did previously, this is very similar pink to one that Vexpo does. And last year I did a shawl called Candy Cane, in that silver and a pink that was very similar to that. And I was planning to do it in those two, and I'm thinking about adding in that and using those three together. I know this isn't the same brand and it's a little bit thinner, but I think it will work. I'm thinking 3 skeins might be a bit big for a shawl. I'm thinking maybe a poncho. I don't know, I haven't quite decided yet. Or I couldn't, if I'd found another colour they had that went with this one, I might have bought that, but I couldn't. So I don't know whether I might go online at the Midwinter Yarns website and see if they have another colour that goes with that. I don't know, I haven't quite decided yet, but I am thinking about maybe doing these 3 together. So if you have any views on that, let me know. But I quite like, linen feels rough when you first touch it, but it is quite nice and it softens up quite nicely and it's not too hot. So I do quite like that. So that's my purchase. So that's my only 2 purchases this week. I'll put the links to a yarn story below if you want to check it out, and if you're in Bath, do go and visit that a yarn story and Wool, which is the other yarn shop in Bath. I didn't have time to do both, and as I hadn't been to a yarn story before, I fancied doing that. So now I want to talk a little bit about environmentally friendly yarn, sustainable knitting. One of my local yarn shops, which I haven't visited yet, which is really annoying because they are really, really local to me, called Polarow in Cornwall. She posted, Lucy the owner posted something on Instagram yesterday which linked to a blog post on why she'll no longer be stocking acrylic yarns and the environmental impact of acrylic yarns, which got me thinking. I posted it in my Facebook group, Love of Lace Knitting, and it started a bit of discussion. I read some of the replies last night. I haven't read them this morning, so I'll check it out later today. But it got me thinking, and I thought maybe this is a good topic to talk about today. So I had actually originally meant to talk about something else. So I quickly this morning sat down and wrote a load of notes. So I'm going to try and make some sense of that. Now, I haven't done like in-depth research on this. And with all things, there's one survey or research study saying one thing, and then there's another study saying the opposite. So, you've got to kind of weigh up the the different evidence and make your decision. Now, there's a lot of talk here in the UK at the moment about reducing plastic. So a lot of supermarkets are reducing the amount of plastics they use. A lot of consumers are reducing the amount of plastics they use. When we were in Cardiff, I went to a zero waste shop near where my daughter lives, where they had loads of environmentally friendly products. You could buy loads of stuff like different fruits and dried fruits and seeds and like washing up liquid, washing detergent. It just started raining outside and I got the window open. Noodles, different things like that, free weight. So you bring in your own container and fill it up and then pay for what you buy, obviously. And then they had loads of cosmetic stuff, skincare stuff, and loads of other kind of environmentally friendly products as well. So I didn't buy, I could have bought a lot, but I didn't. I only bought a reusable metal straw that comes in a little box. It's about that big, so I can keep it in my handbag. Because I do, if I'm out and I have a drink with ice, I hate drinking from the glass because with the ice, I just end up spilling it. So I like straws, but a lot of places now won't use plastic straws. A lot of pubs and things are taking plastic straws away from their counter. And some places are going to using paper straws, which aren't always that great. So, so I don't know whether there's the same emphasis in other parts of the world about reducing plastic, but there is a big emphasis here in the UK, and I think probably also other parts of Europe. I don't know what it's like in the US and Canada and other places, Australia. So if you live in any of those places, you might want to leave a comment. So, the article I came across yesterday from Pearl Rowe was talking about the fact that she wants to stop selling acrylic because the microplastics from acrylic is very damaging to the environment. So I'm going to try and stick to my notes so I don't ramble too much and go too much off topic. I have also read a couple other articles which I will link to below. So acrylic and nylon are manufactured from fossil fuels. And they are not easily biodegradable. When the acrylic yarn is washed, microfibers are released, which cause a lot of damage to waterways and aquatic animals. It did say how many thousands microfibers were released, but I didn't write it down. But studies have shown that 85% of man-made waste on our shorelines are from microplastics. And the only acrylic yarn isn't the only source of that, obviously. There's also toxic fumes from pollution, from the production of acrylic yarns, which is a huge problem too. So there's the microfibers being released, and there's also the toxic fumes from the production. Acrylic yarn is not an environmentally friendly production. It is a man-made fiber. Personally, I don't like it because wearing sweaters made from acrylic, I'm talking like commercial sweaters. If I go in a shop and buying a sweater that's knitted, I always look at the label to see what it's made from, and if it's 100% acrylic, I don't buy it. I do buy it if it's, say, maybe less than 50% acrylic, because clothes in my price range is very difficult to get natural fibers in my price range. So if I don't buy acrylic, stuff that has some acrylic or other man-made fibers in it, I'm very restricted to what I'm buying. Which I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So and also acrylic yarn can take up to 200 years to fully biodegrade. So obviously it's not a very good environmentally friendly yarn. Now I know that a lot of people who are vegan, who don't like animal products, will use acrylic yarn, and I've had this discussion with vegans, and I know Yarn Bonus who've had this discussion with vegans about the environmental impact of yarns like acrylic compared to the environmental impact of natural yarns, which I'll come on to in a minute. I don't know. I've been eating a lot of meat-free lately. I'm not going vegan. And I'm not even 100% vegetarian, but I have cut down the amount of meat I'm eating. My youngest daughter is vegan, but she's happy to wear wool socks, which is why I'm knitting her these. I've had this discussion with her, and she said she doesn't really know how she feels about it because animals aren't killed to provide wool. There has been some animal cruelty issues with wool, with mulesing and things like that. I don't know. I think there's some more awareness of that now, and a lot of that has probably been improved a lot. But I don't know. You've got to weigh up those kind of issues. But acrylic yarn is not environmentally friendly. So I came across a blog post by a company called Darn Good Yarn, which I'll link to below. And they say that natural fibers such as wool, cotton, silk, bamboo, and banana fiber contain no synthetic materials, and therefore manufacturing them has no negative impact on the environment. They're also saying that a lot of these fibers are hand spun, which I don't quite know where they get that from, unless it's just the yarns that they sell in those fibers come from hand spun. I don't know. But I don't agree with that statement that manufacturing natural fibers has no negative impact on the environment, because that's not true. Cotton industry is highly controversial. I did find another blog post which I have got a lot of this information from, and I didn't write it down. I think it's probably called something like a good yarn or something, but I will link it below, and I got a lot of information from there, so I'll link that below, but I didn't write down the name of it. So the cotton industry is highly controversial. The amount of water and pesticides needed to grow cotton, together with the health impact on the people who grow and harvest cotton is very concerning. It's not environmentally friendly. So the World Wildlife Foundation, I think it is, WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, cotton farming uses more pesticides than any other area of agricultural production. Freshwater pollution due to high my handwriting is awful. Freshwater pollution due to high inputs of fertilizers and pesticides, wasteful water use are the major problems. So yeah, I need to write so I can actually read my handwriting. Sorry about that. Obviously organic cotton is a better choice, but there are some issues with organic certification in general. It can be very expensive to be certified, so poorer farmers may not be able to afford to do that. Not all countries or organic certifying bodies have the same standards, and they don't all carry out checks. So there may be farmers who are checked once and then never checked again. So organic certification, there is a bit of an issue there. Just because it says organic doesn't mean it is necessarily. So let's talk about some other fibers, non-wool, non-animal fibers that vegans may like. Linen yarn comes from the flax plant. Flax requires less water and fewer pesticides than cotton, so it is better than cotton. Flax processing is done by hand and mechanical means, so it's lengthy and labor intensive, which means more expensive yarn. I'm also wondering, I'm kind of assuming that maybe it's done in poorer countries. I'm wondering about the pay, how good pay is. Are the people who are involved in processing flax actually paid what they should be paid? So that might be an issue, which I haven't actually looked into, but that might be an issue. Tencel is a brand name for a fiber called lyocell, which is obtained from eucalyptus trees. I didn't actually know I knew Tencel came from trees, but I didn't know it was eucalyptus trees. So Tencel is the brand name for lyocell. So lyocell is biodegradable. Tencel is a leader in the manufacture of ethical and sustainable lyocell. So that's definitely a fiber that might be worth looking into. I haven't used a lot of Tencel. When I used to do hand-dyed yarn, I did have a yarn that was merino Tencel, which was very nice. It had like a silky bamboo kind of feel to it. Bamboo is quite popular, and it's quite often sort of highlighted as environmental fiber. Bamboo is a renewable source. It grows fast, and it doesn't need excessive use of water or pesticides. It's definitely more environmentally friendly. But some bamboo producers are cutting down large areas of forest, particularly in China, to plant bamboo, and the processing of bamboo is done with chemicals which can be harmful to people and the environment. So even though it's a sustainable crop, there are problems with it as well. So it's not necessarily the answer. So what about things like wool and alpaca? Obviously, if you're vegan, you may not want to use wool and alpaca. But if you're not vegan and you just want to looking for environmentally friendly yarn, so I love knitting with both wool and alpaca. They are really comfortable. Some people don't like wool because they have a sensitivity to it or they're allergic to it. Or some people I've heard and read that it's not possible to have a alpaca allergy. I know that's not true because I met people who are allergic to alpacas. So yeah, that can cause problems in that kind of area. So I found articles stating that wool is very environmentally damaging and articles stating that it's very environmentally friendly. So I'm a bit confused when it comes to wool production. It is a renewable resource and it is one fibre which is easier to source locally for most knitters probably, as sheep are available in many parts of the world. So, you know, in the UK we have loads of different sheep breeds. Not all of them are suitable for yarn production. If you're looking for soft yarn, Blue-faced Leicester is one that's very soft, nearly as soft as merino. Obviously, if you live in Australia and New Zealand, there's a lot of merino available. China is producing much more merino. Obviously, China, there's a lot of issues in China, but I don't know. I don't want to open the can of worms on China because there are issues with China. I'm not saying all stuff from China is bad, though. I'm not saying that at all. But this kind of leads to the whole, I mean, I don't know whether wool is environmentally friendly or not. The campaign for wool promotes wool. They would say it is. I know there was a bit of a controversial ad last year by, is it PETA, the animal protection charity, who tend to have quite, what would I want to say, quite sort of in-your-face campaigns, quite controversial campaigns. They did a thing about not wearing wool, and I know a lot of people fought back on that, stating how environmentally friendly and how much better wool was. I don't know. It's still being spun in factories. It's still being washed and scoured and things like that. There are still chemicals involved. There are still environmental impact. If you can buy local wool, that's probably better than buying wool that's been shipped around the world. But, you know, there's a cost involved and there's also availability involved. So it's not just the environmental impact of the wool itself. It's also, do we buy local? Do we have it shipped from, say, South America? Most of the yarn that I was dyeing when I used to do hand-dyed yarn was spun in South America. So it's obviously being shipped across the world from South America to the UK. What about farmers in countries that need our support? So, for example, take the alpaca industry. There's quite a lively alpaca industry in the UK, and there's a lot of great local, great British alpaca yarn. Alpaca originally come from South America. There are alpaca farmers in South America who are struggling to make a living and who are producing great alpaca yarn who need our support as well. So there is that whole, you know, buying local versus buying it from people across the world who need it, but with an environmental impact in terms of travel and that kind of transport and that kind of thing. So there are a lot of things to think about. I'm not an expert on this. I'm learning, and that's part of why I want to do this, because I want to learn more about this and I want to be more mindful in what I buy. I also think we need to think about what we use and what we do in all areas of life, the impact on the environment. There's been some protests in the UK recently called Extinction Rebellion, and they're saying we're in a real climate crisis. We're getting to a point where we can't reverse the damage, and it's quite scary. So we need to look at everything we do, including what we use in our crafting life, in our knitting life, and in all areas of our life. The clothing industry can probably do more about this than the knitting industry can, because it's a bigger industry. So as well as looking at what we're knitting with, looking at what we're buying. You know, this is a cotton t-shirt. Most of my t-shirts are cotton, but it's not organic cotton. Now, I would like to buy ethically sourced clothes, ethically manufactured. There's the whole manufacturing area in poorer countries where people aren't looked after properly. I mean, it's such a massive area, so many things to think about. And I would like to make sure that the clothes I buy are ethically sourced, minimal impact on the environment, things like that. But I don't have unlimited amounts of money. I am on a fairly tight budget when it comes to clothes, and I don't buy a ton of clothes, but I do have clothes to wear. And because I don't buy clothes that are particularly expensive, they don't necessarily last forever. Like this summer, I've had to buy some more clothes because I've lost weight. My daughter, who's vegan, she would like to buy environmentally friendly, ethical clothes, but she, as a student, she can't afford to. So she's decided to buy secondhand clothes. So she goes to secondhand shops and buys a lot of her clothes from secondhand shops. And she says that that's a way that reusing something that somebody else has discarded is better than buying brand new stuff. I've had a look in secondhand shops, but I struggle to find anything in my size range, and I don't like going shopping and browsing through stores for hours. I just want to go in, find something, go out. So there is that whole issue as well. But I don't know, I just want to start a discussion. I think it's something we need to think about. I'm not saying that one thing is right. I'm not saying don't knit with acrylic. I'm not saying don't knit with this, knit with that. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying think about your choices. And if your budget will only stretch to acrylic yarn, okay, I can understand that. You know, I've been on a tight budget at times, and I'm very fortunate that I get a lot of yarn sent to me, and I also buy a lot of yarn wholesale. So I am in a more fortunate position than a lot of people. But you know, it is something we need to think about. So if you want to use, say you want to use less yarn, think about using thinner yarns because they take longer to knit out. So instead of knitting a sweater in chunky yarn, knit it in lace weight yarn, because it will take you longer to knit it, and therefore you will need less materials, if you like. But what do you think about this? What's your views on this issue? Do you prefer man-made fibres? Do you prefer natural fibres? What do you look at when you choose yarn? Please leave your comments below. I'd love to hear your discussion on this. Please be respectful. Please respect other people's views and don't start a fight in the comments, because I will moderate them and delete things if I feel they're inflammatory and try to start an argument. It's something I just want us all to think about and to try and improve what we're doing. So I'll leave all the links to everything I've talked about below. If you have links to articles that are good on this kind of issue, send me the link. I'm happy to learn more, and it's something that I'll continue to think about in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. If there's any topics you'd like me to discuss in future episodes, please leave a comment below, and I will add them to my list. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next week on the Confessions of a Yarn Addict podcast.